Hi, everybody. This week for Fluency, you're reading the passage called The Written Word, and you're practicing the skill of your reading rate. A reading rate is the speed at which you read, and good readers will change the speed that they read at depending on the type of passage. For example, if you're reading a story, it's pretty easy to read quickly, but when you come to dialogue where two characters are talking, you might want to slow down. However, if you're reading an informational story or an informational piece of text, then you might want to slow down so that your reader is able to clearly understand what you're reading. There might be more difficult vocabulary that has to do with the subject you're talking about, and so you need to read slower and more carefully. So practicing your reading rate by reading the entire passage multiple times and then picking out certain chunks that you would like. So this week's passage is called The Written Word, and it's about the people called the Sumerians who lived long ago. And Sumerians lived in Sumer, and they had a special kind of writing that they used, and that's what this text is about. So let's take a look at the first paragraph. It says, "We can't take the written word for granted. Writing didn't just show up out of the blue. It came over thousands of years. Long ago, people used spoken language. They didn't care about writing things down." Paragraph 2. That changed with the Sumerians around 3200 BC. These people first invented writing because of trade. They needed to track trades over long distances. Some of the earliest types of writing were pictographs. These were symbols that stood for objects. For example, pictographs might show how much grain went to one place, or they might show how many sheep were traded. The pictographs were pressed into wet clay. The clay was dried and kept as records. Paragraph 3. Pictographs were fine for some tasks, but not for others. It was hard to use signs for names or titles. People needed a way to record spoken language, so they made symbols to stand for sounds. With the written word, people could write about history. They could also create literature. Writers of the past wrote poems and tales. They wrote down the myths of their lands. Paragraph 4. In one old library, a king collected more than 30,000 clay tablet books. The king had a wish. He wanted to save his people's history. He tried and succeeded. Many of those tablets exist today. In the last paragraph. Over time, different groups of people formed their own kinds of written language. They designed their own alphabets. Writing began with reeds and clay tablets. Today, we write with computers. The written word has helped make the modern world what it is today. So you notice as I read that passage that because the topic was a little bit harder, it was about writing in Sumeria, with the Sumerians writing pictographs, that I chose to read it at a little slower rate than I normally would. So practice reading at a rate that's comfortable for you, where you're able to read accurately, and think about the speed at which you're reading. Have fun practicing.